If you're waiting for the perfect time to sell your home, you might already be missing it. Let's talk timing. All right, today's episode, we have my primary partner and soon to be realtor, Roger Grayson. Thanks for being here, Roger.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So today we're talking about when is the best time to list your home. And if you like this content, please hit like, follow, subscribe. Let's jump into it.
So, what is the best time of year to list your home? That's the big question.
Yeah, that is the big question, right? So I just automatically want to say spring. But when a realtor says spring, the spring market, the spring starts in February, which is funny because I would never, before I got into real estate, I would have never considered February part of spring. But I think that may have been like a holdover. Like, I think that when the market has started to heat up seasonally in the spring, it kind of like creeped earlier and earlier. And that's actually happening right now. So typically, you've heard me say this before. Do you want to share the thing about the Broncos?
Well, I am a Seahawks fan, so if the Seahawks and the Broncos go to the Super Bowl, I'm definitely watching that game. But you have said repeatedly to several different clients that until the Broncos are done playing football for the year, that is when the real spring selling season starts.
Yeah, you're right on. That's an actual statistic. It's an actual statistic that once the Broncos are done playing, that's when our spring selling season really hits off. Now, there are, seasonal or there are variations with that from year to year because what we're talking about is a historical annual seasonal cycle of real estate.
And playoffs, because of Denver's in playoffs. Means the season's going to go longer.
Oh, yeah.
Because the season would be over now if they weren't.
Are we in the playoffs right?
The Denver Broncos are number one in their division. So, yeah, there is playoffs.
Yay, sports ball. Go Broncos. So, there were some years when the spring selling season started sooner. I remember one of the years in COVID, during COVID, which was such an extreme seller's market. We went through the holidays, and of course, the holidays are always slower between Thanksgiving and New Year's. That is the slowest time of the real estate season every year. And then in the COVID years, I had a listing that came to market. We put that listing on like the first week of January, and we had a line down the block of buyers wanting to come in and see that property. Now, those days are gone. I'm telling a story from the COVID years. But the reason I'm telling it is because we have strong indications right now that our spring selling market is already upon us, and it's only January. There was strong buyer activity through December. Roger knows there was a week and a half in December that I was working 10, 12 plus hour days. Like it was still kind of busy in December. And mortgage purchase applications and some other data is showing us that serious buyers are out shopping right now in January. Now, if you're about to list your house, one of the things that you always want to keep in mind is that you never, the first weekend is so important. And so you never want your first weekend to be on a holiday weekend. And I mean, the Broncos being in the playoffs and Super Bowl, those essentially count as holiday weekends.
Yeah.
Like nobody's coming to see your house during the Broncos game.
Some people might.
I made that mistake when I was newer. This was back when I used to do open houses, and I made that mistake. I did an open house on a Sunday, and it was just crickets, crickets, crickets. And then all of a sudden, there was just this rush of people that came in the door, and I found out from the people that the Broncos game had just finished. And so, like, they got done watching the game, and then they came over to see this house. And boy, I never made that mistake again.
So it sounds like what you're saying, might be the best time to list your house is February.
Yeah, February is when the market usually starts to heat up and then rolls through April for sure. Now, sometimes our spring selling season goes as long as into May and June. Definitely cuts off 4th of July. Like by the time that we get to 4th of July, we're into what we call the summer slump. So, and depending on the year, the peak of the market may be in April, it may be in May. And so if you're trying to list your house for sale, you really want to target this February, March, April timeframe. And I know last year I had a couple of sellers who were trying to do that, but they were, prepping their home for sale and doing a lot of DIY stuff. There's only so many hours in the day. And so by the time that they were done with all of their prep stuff to make the home look really pretty and ready, attractive to buyers, boy, they had just really missed that time of the season. And I think that it's easy for home sellers to underestimate how much time that it's going to take them to get their house ready for sale. We did a listing appointment the other day and we walked around the house and we taught, I made that whole list. Oh, that reminds me, I need to email him that list. Made the whole list of stuff that we want him to do before it goes active. And, I don't know how long that's going to take him to do. But my guess is that he might actually underestimate that a little bit. So like if he shoots for getting it all done so that he can list in February, like I won't be surprised if we don't list until March. That's just how it seems to go. But also the best time of year to list is sometimes when you need to. So, don't ever let the historical timing of the market, hold you back from something that needs to be done, because you're not going to, I don't know. I just don't think that it's going to make that big of a difference. Like if you can't hit this February, March, April, peak of the season for some reason, that doesn't mean all is lost. Just put it on. It might take longer to sell, but, I think that sometimes the best time is when the time is right for you.
Good advice.
Thank you.
Make sure you find yourself a good realtor before you list.
And I also had mentioned earlier that winter, between Thanksgiving and New Year's is the slowest time in real estate. There's a lot of sellers during that time who will take their listing off the market, partly because they don't want to deal with showings during the holidays. But there's also fewer buyers out shopping. So this can be a good time. Those winter months can be a good time to list your house because the buyers who are out showing at that time or out looking at that time, they're pretty serious about buying,
Especially in those holiday
Mhm.
months. Yeah.
Yeah,
Weeks.
for sure.
How have recent market shifts changed traditional timing for our buyers and sellers?
That's a good question. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, this spring selling season has shifted earlier than it used to be because now our spring starts in February. Um, but also interest rate volatility kind of, buyers are on the fence, they're off the fence, they're shopping, they're not shopping. And I don't agree with it. And I never recommend that buyers try to time their buy with interest rates. That's one of the worst, most stressful things that you could do, in my opinion. Because the thing is, if you find your house that works for you, the house that you like, and you just buy it, then you're in the house. Now you can watch interest rates, and if you have a good lender, your lender will actually reach out to you when interest rates have come down enough that it makes sense for you to refi. So keep that in mind. But inventory levels are different during the year, So if you're shopping in the spring, part of what makes our spring housing market, drive up is that we have a bunch of buyers come into the market looking for homes, but we also have a bunch of sellers who are listing their homes because we're telling them this is the time to list. So we have a lot of activity going on during that time of year. And so there's a lot of options for buyers.
What do you think 2026 is going to be like versus 2025 for sellers?
I think that 2026, we're going to see more inventory because we already have more inventory in our market than we have in over a decade. So buyers already have more options, right? But we've had a bunch of sellers, not only just because of the holidays that we've just come through, but there were a bunch of sellers who in 2025 withdrew or expired their listings from the market because the market has, been seeing a bit of a price correction and a bit of coming down in prices. And sellers don't like that. They want the most for their house, right? Of course. And so there was data that there was a lot more than usual listings coming off the market, not because they closed, but because the sellers took them off or the listing expired. And so, in addition to having our regular spring market where we expect sellers to be ready to list their house during this time, because people like me have been telling our potential seller clients, since, I don't know, October last year, like, hey, if you don't need to list right now, the best time to list is to wait until February. So we've been telling people that for months. So all those people are going to go on the market. And then I think that we are also going to have a bunch of homes from last year that were for sale but didn't sell. I think those are going to come back on the market too. So I think that we're going to have a real influx of listings this year in 2026. So our buyers will have even more to choose from. And it's possible that that it might just be a really strong year altogether in terms of sales because like the par rate for mortgages, which is like the baseline rate, I saw something yesterday that it broke under 6 to 5.99
Yeah, I saw.
for the first time since they shot up in 2022. And we kept thinking they would come back down, but they never did. They've been in the sixes, and at points they were close to 7, but they've been in low sixes for a while. So just a couple of days ago, we had that break that threshold of 6. And if buyers get wind of that the rates are under 6, a bunch of them will jump off the fence and come back into buying. And it's kind of silly. I mean, the interest rate thing is silly because I have had buyers for months now who are locking in at 5.3, 5.5, 5.8. And they're doing that because of seller concessions, or they're buying the rate down themselves. But usually they are buying that interest rate down permanently with money that they get from the seller. And I need to get the new data on this, but the last time that I saw the data in 2025, almost 70% of single-family homes that were being sold the seller was giving the buyer credit at closing. We call it seller concessions. And the average dollar amount for those seller concessions was like 12 grand.
Wow.
And you can buy your rate down quite a bit with 12 grand. Or you can use it for closing costs, but yeah.
So I heard you mention earlier, about well-priced homes, well-staged homes, ready to sell, move-in ready. You know, those types of homes should sell well year-round, right?
Not only year-round, but they typically sell in the first week or two. And sometimes we still see multiple offers in this market. So sellers need to be aware of that. Like the more that they can do to make their house feel like it is move-in ready, like those buyers can just move their stuff in and not have to do any little things. The more that it feels like that when a buyer walks through, the faster it's going to move and the more money you're going to get for it, because the faster it moves, you get more money. Whether that's because of because of the fact that you had multiple offers, and so you were able to kind of drive the price up in a little bit of a bidding war, or just the fact that it wasn't on market for so long that you had to start making price reductions. So yeah, so any time of year, well priced, move in ready, any time of year, those are going to move.
I know we've talked about timing uh, for putting your house on the market, but what's different for those sellers who still need to get another place? So they're selling their home, but they do need to get another home.
Yeah, okay. So that can become tricky, especially if they're in a position where they need to close on both homes on the same day. And it happens. Like that's a situation, not everybody can afford to move first and then sell. I mean, in my mind, from my perspective, this is the optimum thing to do is to get out of the house completely, move to your next place or move to a temporary location, and then you can stage the home, and have it sit there looking beautifully perfect for the whole time that it's on the market, and you don't have to mess around with showings, right? So all the inconveniences of living in your home while selling it disappear if you just move first. But like I said, not everybody has that sort of flexibility or ability to do that. So you so there's some different things that happen. Um Sometimes it's just magic. Sometimes it's just luck. Where they need to get their house on the market, and you have to go under contract really before you can even start shopping, because once you start shopping for your replacement home, it's very difficult to get an offer accepted by a seller. Um, if you have a home that needs to be sold and it's not on the market yet, your offer to buy their home does not seem serious because you don't even have your home up for sale yet. So the order of events really is that you get your home on the market first and then you start shopping. And it could even be that you can't really start making offers even until you're under contract on your existing home. That does happen. You might find some sellers who are willing to accept your offer and hope that your buyer comes to buy your house. But that means that they are taking a leap of faith in you. They are taking their home off the market because you are under contract on it with them. And then if you don't find a buyer within a certain amount of time, now that seller has to make a decision if they are going to hang in there with you and allow you to extend your contract on their home, or are they going to put their home back? Are they not going to extend it and they're going to put their home back on the market and try to get a different buyer? So it gets really complicated really fast. Um, and then there's also this thing about seller rent backs, or post-close occupancy agreements is officially what we call them. Or if you like to use acronyms, I like to call it the PCOA. And we were using this a ton during the pandemic years where, nobody could buy their next home until they had this one sold. And so what we did was we sold this one and we gave the seller a post-close occupancy agreement, sometimes just for a week or two, but sometimes for up to 2 months. And we said, hey, seller, you can live in your old home after you sell it to us. You can just stay put there while you shop for your replacement home. And then once you get that under contract and closed, then you can move and then your buyer moves into that home. So that's an option too that actually provides a lot of really great flexibility when somebody doesn't have kind of an interim place to hop to before they find their next home.
So sounds like flexibility on the possession dates. That's an advantage for, a buyer even to say, yes, we can give you some time to move out. And so that puts them in a better, maybe even gives the buyer a better advantage as well.
Yeah, and that type of situation often happens in the lower price points because typically in the lower price points, you have a seller who is trying to upgrade into something, and then you probably have like maybe a first-time home buyer buying their, starter home. And so those first-time home buyers, they're renting, right? Or maybe they're staying with family or friends or something, but they do have a lot more flexibility than a buyer who is also a seller
Mhm.
and saying, hey, I'd like to buy your house, but I got to sell mine first, and we need to get this all worked out. Like it's very complicated to do. We've been doing it for years and decades. And that's just a part of the process.
What mistakes do sellers make when trying to time the market?
I hate this timing the market thing. It's impossible to do, right? Like, it's just
We don't have
impossible.
crystal balls, and so we don't.
Exactly. We don't have a crystal ball. We it's just and I think it creates more stress than it's worth to try to time the market. Um, but I don't think there is like this mythical peak price. We see the median price move throughout the year. It comes up during the spring and then it kind of peaks and it comes back down over the winter. Um, but, when the timing is right for you to move, that's when the timing is right. And so I think way more worth a seller's time to put effort and energy into making their home, show ready, move in ready, put way more energy into that than into trying to time it on the perfect time or the perfect date, because that is going to return far more on your investment than any sort of timing that you might do.
So, with that in mind, what do you say to your clients who are, for instance, they're letting the headlines drive their decision instead of just data or local data?
Mhm. Um, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, these are not my ideal clients. Um, but the headlines are everywhere, and I know people pay attention to the headlines. My issue with the headlines is that their headlines are not about disseminating good information for buyers and sellers to make decisions for themselves. The headlines, it's sort of like this research principle of like if you see a study, like who paid for the study, right? What is the purpose of the headlines? The headlines are to grab their attention and pull them into these news stories and to, subscribe to these media channels or outlets or whatever. That's the purpose of the headlines. The purpose of the headlines is never to inform well. And so that's why it's so important for anyone who's thinking about buying or selling, go talk to your realtor. Talk to your full-time professional realtor that that you feel is an expert in the field, and talk to them about the timing, what you're trying to do. If you're trying to sell your house, have them come look at your house and have these conversations early. People tend to wait until they think they're ready. And I think part of the reason that they wait because they think they know is because they don't want to waste my time. And I appreciate that. It's very sweet. It's a sweet sentiment for them to say, "Oh, no, I don't want to meet with you right now. I'm not ready. I don't want to waste your time." But here's the thing is, it's not this is my job. This is what I love doing. I love going to listing appointments and walking around somebody's house and talking about like, how would we stage it and how would we market it and what little things might you want to do before you put it active on the market. And I want to have that conversation early. Definitely weeks if not months, and even if you're a year out, that's okay. I think that the consumers, it would help them to know that the time frame that we work with potential clients is sometimes years. I've had both buyers and sellers that I talk to, and we're not actually doing a deal until years down the line. And that's okay. That's part of this industry. But letting headlines drive your decisions about whether or not you're buying or selling, I guess all I have to say is that um, real estate is probably your biggest financial asset. And so as you're making decisions about your largest financial asset, probably the best person to or people to speak with about that and to help guide and advise you are your realtors and your lenders and those professionals, not the headlines.
Yeah, we've all seen those videos on TikTok where it's, you know, market's crashing, every other video is something about it, but it really, again, it goes back to where are they getting their information? Are they local here in the Denver market? So
Let's see, what else? What other kind of mistakes do sellers make?
delaying preparation of the house, delaying getting their listing ready, missing that window, maybe that,
Yeah, and we
I
kind of talked about that because we were talking about people who are fixing up their house and it takes them longer than they think to actually get all the work done and get it to the point where now it's ready for pictures and ready for sale. Um, but also, looking at what's going on in their specific neighborhood. And this is another reason why it's nice to have a good listing agent on your side, because once the listing agent knows that you're thinking about listing, they're going to be, watching what's going on in your neighborhood, right? So, like as an example, when I go in, because I'm going to look at comps, right? And when we put a house on the market for sale, I want to know what else is for sale, and the comps are the ones that already sold, and those are important in helping us guide our pricing decision. But it's also important to know, like, what other homes are on the market right now in your neighborhood, because if there's a bunch of them, then we have a lot of competition and maybe our marketing strategy is going to be a little bit different. Or I looked at one the other day where nothing in that neighborhood, like that house, had sold in the past 6 months. And so, that's a totally different story. That's telling me that there's not very much inventory in that neighborhood and we can market it and price it differently. All right, so as we wrap up this episode, we've been talking about when's the best time to list your home. And it's January, and January is already off to a strong start. So I'm saying now-ish. Um, what else? Did you have any other like key takeaways from this?
so even if you miss that peak time to sell, it sounds like the best time to sell is when you need to and your home is ready.
Yeah, for sure. Because you have people, with kids and they need to sell they need to take into account school times and things like that. Or maybe you have travel plans that need to be worked around. So really, yeah, the best time to sell is once you are able to have the house ready for sale and then just get it on the market. But always avoid those holiday weekends. Never list your home on a holiday weekend.
Or Broncos playoff weekend.
That's right. That's right. So selling really works best with a plan, not a guess. And if you're thinking about selling, reach out to me and I will help you decide what's best for you. If you like this content and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go.